To ensure his official career went smoothly, my father decided to give me to his superior, Kyan, who was nearly 50, as a concubine. But on the day of the ceremonial face unveiling, Kyan said the one he actually had his eye on was my father. From then on, he took it upon himself to act like my stepmother, sewing silk dresses for me, buying me hairpins and bracelets. Outsiders all said that Minister Kai had been bewitched by me, a seductive little vixen, not knowing that his kindness was only part of a deal we'd struck. One day, I would give him my father.
1.
I was carried into the Kai residence in a small bridal sedan chair. After all, I was just a concubine, his seventh, and an unofficial one at that. No one in the household found it unusual. At most, the servants muttered, "Look, another one's been brought into the west courtyard." Yeah, and this one's even younger, only 14. For 3 full years, my stepmother had worked tirelessly to please the official wife, hoping she would finally agree to match me with Han Xingyuan, the illegitimate son of Lord Han, a 6th-rank official at the Imperial Academy. A month ago, Lord Han had finally nodded in approval. Both families had secretly agreed to exchange birth charts in a few days and finalize the engagement before year's end. But then, because my father's career had stalled, he took to heart some drunken banter from his colleagues and made up his mind to send one of his daughters to his direct superior, Kyan, in hopes of securing a promotion. My father had 3 sons and 7 daughters. One was already married, 2 were still children. That left 4 daughters of marriageable age. But take away my second sister, whose engagement was already set, and only 3 remained. Stepmother counted on her fingers again and again, reassuring me, "Don't be afraid, Ayun. Our marriage arrangement with the Han family is basically settled. Unless there's no other choice, they wouldn't go back on their word. All these years, I've served the official wife with everything I have. She wouldn't do this to you. And besides, you haven't even reached your hairpinning ceremony yet." I thought at the time, yes, my 2 older sisters were 16 and 18. By age and order, there was no reason it should be my turn. But somehow it still was.
2.
The day my wedding garments were delivered, stepmother fainted twice. The first time was from shock. She couldn't catch her breath and collapsed right in front of me. The second time was after she got beaten. She'd stormed off to confront the official wife. She listed all the ways she had given her heart over these years. My legitimate sister was still nursing at 5, and she had left me, barely a month old, just to go feed her. She always put my sister first, didn't even have time to care for me. I was raised on goat's milk. Whenever the official wife was sick, headaches, fevers, she was always the one by her bedside, fetching water and medicine, personally attending to her. Not even to her husband or her own siblings had she shown such dedication. Even at banquets, she'd rush to defend the official wife without caring about appearances, like a mad dog protecting its master. For that, people outside still mocked her, said she had no dignity, no proper upbringing. But she never minded. She even took cold medicine after giving birth to me, making herself infertile just to put the official wife at ease. All of it just to secure a better future for me. What she couldn't understand was, why me? Why did it have to be me? She broke down crying, completely lost all composure. The official wife only frowned and said she was being disrespectful, then ordered the servants to beat her. She couldn't take it, fainted, and was dragged back, her body bruised and bloodied. Everyone in the courtyard laughed at her disgrace. Even after waking up, she still begged the official wife for mercy. "Ayun, you were just about to marry into the Han family and live a good life. I can't watch them send you to Kai's house. That man's so old, and you're only 14. Heaven help us, my poor Ayun is just 14. They're monsters. They're not even human. My Ayun, what will you do? What will happen to you?" Her weeping, her pleading, even her self-abuse, kneeling, kowtowing until her forehead bled, was nothing but pitiful behavior in the official wife's eyes. She ordered someone to slap her across the mouth and knocked out one of her teeth. In this world, the weak don't deserve a voice.
3.
After she came back, stepmother wanted to escape the household with me. But she had been sold into this compound at the age of 6 and never had much sense for planning. In her panic, she didn't even make it past the back garden before the official wife showed up with a group of maids and old nannies to block our way. Stepmother was locked up in the firewood shed. I was pinned to the ground by several of the old nannies, unable to move. The official wife looked at me with a face full of motherly affection. She lifted my chin with well-manicured fingers and said, "Ayun, you're a big girl now. I know you're clever, smarter than Chuanyang. You should know what to do to keep her safe in this household."
I did. Of course I did.
My body was pressed to the ground, my chin lifted. I had to stretch my neck to look up at her. Her sharp fingernails pricked into my cheek, the sting keeping my mind clear. The floor was freezing, and kneeling on it felt like blades slicing into my bones. I forced a smile and looked up at the mistress of the Jiang household. My voice came out as though muffled by heavy cotton. It was so cold. I had known that when someone was cold to the bone, they couldn't stop trembling. That when it was that cold, speaking steadily was impossible. So I had to speak slowly, one word at a time. If Mother knows I'm clever, then you should also know. Using threats like this to force me won't work. The official wife blinked, as if she hadn't understood. "What did you just say?" I let out a breath and repeated. I said, "Trying to use stepmother to force me into submission won't work." She stared at me strangely. The cold wind drained the warmth from her hand, and her skin turned pale and bluish. As she looked at me, a flicker of interest appeared in her eyes. "But she's the one who gave birth to you. She's done everything to plan for your future." "Yes," I sighed. "She's poured her whole heart into me. But if I were gone, maybe things would be easier for her." Hearing that, she finally lowered herself to squat down and look me in the eye. "Death is easy. But have you thought about what would happen to Chuanyang after you die?" I looked at her earnestly. "Mother, people like us, the lowborn, our lives are worth nothing. Living is just a slow kind of suffering. Wouldn't it be better to end it all in one go?" She finally realized I truly intended to die. After a moment of silence, she spoke. "It's cold out here. Let's go inside and talk."
4.
A brazier had been lit inside the room, and with the warmth filling the space, kneeling on the floor didn't feel so unbearable anymore. After finishing a cup of tea, the madam finally opened her mouth slowly. "You're about to be married, no longer a child. I'll say just one thing, listen well. As long as you get into that bridal sedan properly, I'll make sure you and Chuanyang are given a shred of dignity. People live their whole lives chasing something, but in the end, it's just to stay alive. Once you're married, it's your duty to let Chuanyang live a better life. Why push your own mother, who's already worn herself out half her life for you, into death's arms?" I lowered my head, eyes cast down. Mother is right. A miserable life is still better than a good death. If one can live with dignity, who would choose to die? Though I have no say in my marriage, I hope Mother understands your daughter may have nothing, but at the very least, I still have this body, this life. If I'm willing to risk it all, no one can really do anything to me. As the saying goes, the poor fear the ruthless, and the ruthless fear those who don't fear death. The madam was silent for a moment, then nodded. "I understand what you're saying. So, tell me, what is it that you want?" "Please, Mother. Go see my concubine mother. A person only lives once. They ought to live with clarity. And she, in this lifetime, deserves at least that much clarity."
5.
The madam hadn't expected all my fussing and threats of life and death to amount to just such a minor request. But if saying a few polite words was all it took to get me willingly into the bridal sedan, then it was easier than she'd imagined. So she braced herself and went to see my mother. I waited outside for a long time. When the madam finally came out, I went in. My mother looked like she'd been crying. Now, she sat numbly on a pile of firewood. When she saw me come in, her eyes welled up, but no tears fell. Only a red rim remained. "Miss, it's all my fault," she said. "It's me. I was born low, and I dragged you down." I stepped forward and took her hand. "Come on, let's go sit in our room. This woodshed's full of drafts. It's no place to live." She let me hold her hand. Her teeth had been knocked out, her mouth still bloody, not yet cleaned. When she spoke, her voice was thick and muffled from the injury. "You're such a good child. If only you hadn't been born from me. It's all my fault for choosing to be a lowly concubine. I should have just hit my head and died back then instead of gasping my way through life and dragging you into this." "I must disagree," I said firmly, gripping her hand tighter. "This world may be harsh, but I'm still grateful to have come into it through you." Chuanyang had always been beautiful and sweet-natured. When she entered the household, her looks were striking, but her ways were naive. She wasn't very clever and couldn't handle tasks well, so the steward sent her to the flower house. The flower house wasn't a terribly hard job, but it wasn't easy either. And there was no chance to serve the masters and gain favor. But she liked it, tending flowers all day, rarely stepping outside. Until one day, my father stumbled and drunk, recited a few lines of poetry, and pulled her into a fleeting moonlit dalliance. After that, he completely forgot her. She pretended it never happened either, just focused on saving up money to buy her freedom. But then she got pregnant. She wasn't sharp, couldn't hide it. Soon enough, someone found out, and she was nearly beaten to death. She said she truly wanted to die then, but what about the child inside her? It was still a life, after all. She thought long and hard, and in the end, couldn't bring herself to do it. 6. When I was born, I was scrawny, wrinkled, and small. My father glanced once, then left with a flick of his sleeve, never to return. Chuanyang was still young back then. She'd spent years hidden away in the flower house and didn't know how to raise a child. She had to ask around, learning bits and pieces from whoever she could. She wasn't a proper concubine, not enough for my father to go through the bureaucracy and register her officially. But now with a child, she was allowed to stay on as a secondary wife in a side courtyard, with a small maid assigned to help her. That maid was even younger than her. Neither of them knew what they were doing, let alone how to raise a baby. My body was weak too, constantly falling ill. Chuanyang and the maid took turns watching over me. I wouldn't take medicine, so they wiped me down again and again to bring my fever down. Eventually, Chuanyang could barely produce milk. In desperation, she begged the madam to let me nurse from the legitimate daughter's wet nurse. My half-sister was spoiled. At 5 years old, she still wanted to breastfeed. When displeased, she'd hit Chuanyang, biting her until blood flowed from her chest. The wounds would scab, then break again. Still, to appease her, the madam brought in an old doctor to nurse me back to health. I got sick less and slowly began to grow. And thanks to that sister of mine, milk-boosting supplements were sent to our little courtyard, like water flowing downstream. Chuanyang squeezed out what little milk she had to feed me a sip, saved me a bite of the supplements, and somehow, she managed to raise me into a chubby little thing.
7.
Later on, she started thinking about my future. She knew the madam looked down on her. But what could she do? Trapped inside that square courtyard, the highest figure she could ever reach was the madam herself. But the sincerity she offered meant nothing to the madam, and she had nothing better left to give. After this recent ordeal, Chuanyang had aged significantly. She believed I was walking into a fire pit, but didn't know how to pull me back. She often blamed herself for being stupid, for not dying sooner. She'd see me and start crying all over again. But how many people in this world are born wise? She entered this household young, uneducated, with no guidance. Even so, she stumbled her way through and raised me. I truly think she's done very well. Whoever I marry, it's still marriage. Lord Kai is powerful and influential. At least that's a promising future. That's what I told her. And, truthfully, that's what I told myself too.
8.
The day I entered the household, Lord Kai came home drunk. I heard he originally went straight to the study, but somehow ended up in my room instead. He didn't speak when he saw me, just stared at me while drinking more wine. After a while, he finally opened his mouth and asked, "You're 14 this year?" I lowered my head and answered, "Yes." He asked again, "You were originally engaged to that boy from the Han family?" I told the truth. We were of age and had been introduced, but we hadn't exchanged birth charts or finalized the engagement. He nodded slightly and sighed. That boy has some talent. He has a bright future ahead. You and he would have made a good match. Following an old man like me, what a waste. I couldn't figure out why he was suddenly bringing this up, so I dared not respond. But then he took another sip of wine and said, "He came to me with some dirt on me, asking me to treat you well in the future. Young people, so fearless, like calves who don't fear tigers. If this were a few years ago, neither of you would have had any chance of surviving this. But maybe I'm getting old. I'm starting to soften up." He emptied his cup and stood up, swaying slightly. I hurried to help him, but he flung my hand away. "This house is big. Keeping a little girl around is nothing. Just stay here and be good. You'll at least have food to eat. That's all life is, just staying alive." As he turned to leave, I mustered my courage. "I know that secret. I also know you favor my older brother, because—" A wave of alcohol breath hit me in the face. His robe fluttered, and in the blink of an eye, his hand was around my throat, choking me. Kai-en's eyes were bloodshot, but he smiled darkly as he asked, "Because of what?" "Because you like him. It's his blessing." The suffocating pressure wrapped around my chest like countless threads, pulling tighter and tighter. My lungs felt like they were going to burst, and all the blood in my body surged upward. At that moment, I truly thought I was going to die. But just then, Kai caught sight of the jade pendant on my waist and suddenly stopped. "This pendant, why is it on you?" The pressure on my throat vanished, and a rush of cold air flooded my lungs. It felt like thousands of sharp needles pierced me all at once. My body convulsed instinctively. It was only then that I realized even my fingers had gone numb. After catching my breath and regaining a bit of clarity, I immediately responded. "My father gave it to me." As soon as I spoke, a ridiculous idea flashed through my mind. Kai toyed with the pendant in his hand, deep in thought. I stood there trembling, trying to figure out how to survive the night. I touched my still aching neck, the pain of suffocation still lingering in my mind. Then, despite everything, I opened my mouth and said, "There have always been men who love other men throughout the dynasties. It's just a man, after all." Kai, drunk and swaying, slumped into a chair with the pendant in hand. "At your age, what do you know? Your father also died for love," I said, kneeling properly on the floor. "Do you really want to follow in his footsteps?" 3 generations of the Kai family had men who favored other men. Kai-en's grandfather was better off. At least he left behind heirs. But when it came to Kai-en's father, he refused to marry no matter what, and even eloped with a man. After he was caught and brought back, Kai-en's great-grandfather, then the family patriarch, arranged a marriage for him with a woman from the Wang family. Lady Wang didn't know about it at first. She thought she wasn't attractive enough, and that's why her husband didn't like her. She even went out of her way to find medicine, hoping to conceive and win his heart with a child. But as the years passed, when the child turned 5, she finally found out her husband already had a lover, and it was a man. Furious, she killed the man. When Kai-en's father learned of it, he took poison and died for love.
9.
Women rarely keep secrets among themselves, and eventually, the whole story spread. By that time, Lady Wang had been a widow for many years. Because of what happened to her husband, she loathed men with that kind of inclination. That's why Kai, though fond of men, always kept it to himself. He never dared let anyone know. What I said about his father tonight was only to show him I understood his burden. It was risky, but since Han Xingyuan knew and still lived, I figured I might as well take a chance. If it worked, maybe I could even get my aunt out of the Jiang household. Kai tossed the pendant back to me. I caught it firmly. "I can help you." That was my father. With me in the middle, Lord Kai, surely you can get what you want, without anyone knowing. At this, Kai leaned forward slightly, seeming puzzled. When did I realize he was interested in my father, not my brother? Honestly, with the way he looked at the pendant, you'd have to be blind not to see it.
10.
The very next day, Kai decisively changed my residence within the compound. Originally, I lived quite far off, It took about half the time of burning an incense stick just to reach the main courtyard. But now, Kyan moved me next to his study, so I only needed to turn a corner to enter his courtyard. This was not a good sign. Granted, Kyan thought my old place was too remote, and that conspiring there wouldn't be very safe. Although his reputation outside was reckless, inside the mansion, he always appeared to keep away from women. His suddenly treating me differently was probably inviting trouble. Sure enough, no sooner had I moved and barely settled than Kyan's main wife, Lady Lu, summoned me. Normally, I should have paid my respects to Lady Lu the day I arrived, but since she had been ill and not seeing visitors, my entry was only marked by a servant delivering a bracelet, her way of acknowledging me. When she called for me today, I expected her to seize the chance to make trouble. But when I arrived at Lady Lu's courtyard, there were 7 women inside, each dazzlingly dressed and distinct in their charm. They all looked at me curiously as I came in. Lady Lu, seated in the main seat, cleared her throat lightly, and the others stopped their blatant staring and switched to whispering and sneaking peeks instead. Lady Lu still looked quite ill. Even with makeup, her sickness showed. After coughing several times, she smiled and asked, "You've learned your manners well, huh? Did someone specially teach you?" I thought for a moment, then answered. My legitimate elder sister had a palace governess teach her manners for several years. I was fortunate to follow her and learn for a few years as well. A green-dressed young girl sitting near Lady Lu couldn't help but speak up. Her elder sister is famous for her bad temper and intolerance. She treats this little maid like a slave, so I guess she just overheard a bit while studying alongside. Seeing me glance at her instinctively, the girl smiled and said, "Don't mind me being blunt. I'm also a family's concubine daughter. My life is better than yours, but I've also been treated like a thing. That's why I married into this mansion too. I'm 3 years older than you, and at least I'm of age." Then she added, "At 14, they still dared to marry you off here as a concubine to some old fart. Clearly, they're all heartless. Why cover for them? But no matter what, now that you're in this family, we're family too. Relax, our mistress is very generous, and the sisters are easy to get along with. There's not much dirty business. After all, that old man isn't much to count on." At this, Lady Lu interrupted with a few harsh coughs, and the green-dressed girl smiled at her. All right, I'll stop." Then the girl turned to me and said, "We called you here for no other reason than seeing that old man cares about you. So we want to ask, did he, do anything with you last night?" 11. Lady Lu spat out the tea she was drinking and coughed so hard her cheeks flushed red, and she struggled to breathe. This time, she really choked. The women gathered around to help her breathe and pat her back. Lady Lu finally recovered, grabbed the girl's wrist and scolded, "A Yun is still a child. Can't you show some restraint?" Hearing child spoken like that stirred some indescribable feelings in me. I waited for the commotion to settle. Lady Lu wiped her mouth and said, "Yun Jin speaks without filter. She didn't scare you, did she?" "No." I lowered my head and answered after a long pause. Lady Lu, seeing I was tired, said no more and sent me back. Halfway back, Yun Jin caught up with me and handed me a solid gold hairpin. "We live nearby. Let's keep in touch more." I nodded and returned to my courtyard, running into Kyan coming out. Yun Jin met him face to face and gave a perfunctory greeting, which Kyan ignored. Seeing me, Kyan beckoned me over. Upon seeing my clothes, he frowned and asked, "Why are you dressed like that going out?" I looked down at my clothes, seeing nothing wrong, and couldn't understand what rule I had broken. Then Yun Jin came back and said, "She has no one to rely on, and the concubine mother isn't a figure of importance in the house. What decent clothes could she possibly have? What she's wearing today is probably just some random stuff stuffed on her to make up appearances. If the master doesn't like it, why not take her and buy some proper clothes?" I was about to explain that I wasn't trying to be clever to get new clothes, but Kyan nodded and said, "Fine, let's go out for a walk." "Master, I live in the rear quarters and don't see visitors. It doesn't matter what I wear." Kyan frowned more deeply, hesitating to say something. Yun Jin cut in. "A Yun, You don't have to refuse. The Kai family is wealthy for generations. Our master has plenty of silver. Compared to you wearing this glaring outfit in front of him, spending some money on decent clothes isn't much. Now I understood what taboo I had broken. Kai thought I was dressed too tacky.
12.
Since I was little, I had followed my eldest legitimate sister. Anything she didn't want to learn or couldn't master, she made me do instead. If I did well, I'd get praise. If not, I'd be punished. But dressing elegantly was something my sister liked, so I never learned it. The Kai family was a prestigious clan with many branches, and Kaian, having grown up immersed in it, had far broader and finer tastes than ordinary households. He took me to the famous Jinshio Pavilion in the capital, where he first spent a large sum to buy 2 sets of ready-made clothes crafted by master tailors. After altering the sizes in a few places, I immediately put on 1 set. He also ordered 3 sets of clothes, shoes, and socks for each season, as well as some veils, hats, cloaks, and capes. After paying, we went to Wanbao Tower. Wanbao Tower dazzled with an array of jewelry that made one's eyes spin. When my eldest sister came of age, she had been here too. Even a simple hairpin could cost over 10 taels of silver, nearly half a year's expenses for a family of 4. Kine seemed to be a regular here. Upon arrival, he was led to a private room, and finer jewelry was brought out in succession. The jewelry he liked was either put on me by the maids or purchased outright without needing to be worn. After selecting everything, he also commissioned several matching jewelry sets. He proposed ideas while the craftsman and the hairpin lady listened on site and made sketches for him to review. Later, on a whim, he even drew a few designs himself and gave them to the shop. His calligraphy was rare and exquisite. The shopkeeper happily accepted it and said many auspicious things. When leaving, the shopkeeper politely bid farewell to the master and young mistress. Kine was startled for a moment, then turned and ordered, "This girl was brought into my household with pure intentions. Don't call her young mistress. She's the beloved daughter of a colleague's family, technically my little niece." The shopkeeper listened in surprise to this title, glanced cautiously at my expression, then hurriedly slapped his own mouth, smiling apologetically. "It was my mistake. Please forgive my rude words, madam." Kine said no more and led me onto the carriage to leave. Within a day, rumors spread throughout the capital that the over 50 Kai Shangshu had taken a beautiful concubine whom he adored, personally accompanying her to order silk garments and hairpins. By evening, the gossip had changed names, but those who knew that Kine was behind it dared not discuss it further for fear of trouble. On the day of the traditional returning to the bride's family ceremony, Kine had prepared early and waited outside for me. Although I didn't want to attract attention, I still wore the clothes he had bought and the full set of head ornaments. 13. According to custom, concubines did not accompany their husbands for the returning home ceremony. Naturally, no one objected when Kine chose to come with me. The invitation had been delivered to the Jiang family a day in advance. My father, the main wife, and the children waited outside. By etiquette, they were my elders. But since Kine was my father's direct superior, they did not dare to act arrogantly. Seeing the carriage, they quickly and properly greeted us. The main wife saw my outfit and immediately smiled, taking my hand. "Now that you're married, you're truly a grown woman. We've prepared a small banquet in the inner courtyard. Come sit with your mother and sisters. The men will have their own matters to discuss." I nodded, bowed to Kine and my father, then walked arm in arm with the main wife toward the inner courtyard. After turning a few corners, we both let go of each other's hands without saying a word. "Where's my stepmother?" I asked. The main wife frowned. "On a day as joyful as this, she's been crying and is not fit to see visitors. We've arranged for her to rest. Let her out. I want to see her." The main wife gave me a faint, almost mocking smile. "Don't think you can act high and mighty just because you've gained favor with Kai Shangshu, Ayun. That Kai Shangshu is old. How long can he really protect you? You must understand, the Jiang family is your birth family and your support. Your brothers and sisters share your blood. Listen, Ayun, your stepmother is fine. Why can't you wait to see her? If you cause a scene now, she'll start crying again, and if Kai Shangshu sees it, he'll think I, as her mother-in-law, am mistreating you." I glanced back at Madame Gua, who had been silently following all along. "You heard all that?" "I heard it all." I smiled. "Then go and give my response to the master." "Yes." The main wife's eyes sharpened as she shouted, "I dare you." The maids immediately stepped forward to block Madame Gua's way. She was unfazed and respectfully said to the main wife, "Let Lady Jiang know. I once served as a fourth-rank female official in the palace and, upon leaving, received the Empress Dowager's grace and a third-rank decree. Even if Lord Jiang is only a fifth-rank Ministry of Revenue officer, none of his superiors, even the Deputy Minister of fourth rank, would dare to block my path." The main wife had no choice but to look at me. "Ayun, we are one family. Why make such a fuss? If you really see me as family, you wouldn't have given me such a humiliating welcome on my return home day." What was the main wife up to? Nothing more than the usual tactic to remind a concubine-born daughter that even if she married into a prestigious family, the Jiang household still controlled her, and her stepmother's livelihood was in their hands, all to keep me obedient and under their control. "Mother, do you really think it's such an outrageous thing for a married daughter to want to see her birth mother on her return home day? Why block it so fiercely?" The main wife bit off a fingernail in frustration, then grudgingly sent someone to fetch my stepmother and accompanied me to the warming chamber. 14. My sisters arrived before my stepmother. Except for a few unmarried ones, even my eldest sister, who was married out, came back to see the commotion. Seeing me, my eldest sister smiled brightly. "People outside say Lord Kai dotes on you like his heart and soul." At first, I didn't believe it. "You've always been so plain at home. I thought you wouldn't be liked by any man." "Big sister, I told you, those lowly people just know how to flatter and act cute. Her own mother is just like that. What good can she be?" My eldest sister shook her round fan and casually plucked off the step shake, hair ornament from my head. "Oh, that's a treasure from Wanbao Tower, red jade entwined with branches, 400 gold coins. Do you know how much father's annual salary is? 1,800 guan, 300 gold." As she spoke, her eyes grew more envious. "That old man is really getting on in years, yet he treats you like a treasure." But before her hand reached my head, I caught it behind her wrist. The thing might be fine, but grabbing it like that isn't right. Seeing me block her, she instinctively raised the fan to hit me, so I stood and snatched it, fanning her face once. Her fan was made with white jade bones and silk surface, not very painful as a strike, but hitting someone's face had a different meaning. Even the lady of the house's good upbringing couldn't hold back. She hurried over to check my eldest sister's face. The sisters around exchanged uneasy glances. No one dared to speak. A woman's face was paramount if it got cut or scarred. More importantly, this happened right in front of her own mother, hitting her daughter's face. My father and Kine arrived just in time. A moment later, I feared the lady of the house might tear me apart. But just before the slap landed, Kine stepped in front of me. The lady's hand came down, but hit the sleeve of Kai En's robe, missing me. She stumbled, almost falling. My father, shorter than Kai En and slower, arrived seeing the chaotic scene and felt a chill run down his spine. He stomped his feet anxiously. What is all this commotion? Jiang Yun is acting recklessly, causing sisters to fight each other. Please, sir, make a ruling for Ah Yao. The lady of the house cried with a tear-streaked face, as if the sky were falling, ignoring Kai En's presence. Behaving so shamelessly, won't this bring trouble to the family? After that, everything went silent. Now that I was married into the Kai family, if trouble came, it would affect the Kai household. I understood the lady's meaning perfectly. She saw I was uncontrollable. To hit her daughter in front of her was to trample on her dignity. If she swallowed this insult, it would only become harder to control her stepchildren. If uncontrollable, better to destroy now, while I had just married in. To her, the old husband and young wife was just a novelty. A few nights together couldn't compare to family harmony. Why bother keeping a troublemaker? Those who held high positions were clever. She believed Kian was too, and would understand her intentions. My father had been an official for many years, and also understood. But he wanted to gain the upper hand. Women inside the household were quick to argue over temporary loyalties, but my father sent me to the Kai household for the long term. No matter what, we shared blood. It was better for me to be comfortable in the Kai household than to be neglected. Otherwise, what was the point of sending me there? All his efforts to flatter his superior would be in vain, with no benefits. Besides, if my guilt was confirmed, and Kine thought my father deliberately sent an unmanageable daughter, it would only anger him. In just a moment, my father understood and snapped sharply. Enough of your nonsense. Speaking like this in front of Lord Kai. What are you babbling about? 15. The lady of the house bit her lip. Master, does the Jiang family have no obedient daughters left? If the festering sore isn't removed, it will rot away inside. It's better to discover this early. Perhaps it's a blessing. Her words implied to Kian that aside from me, the Jiang family had plenty of daughters. If this one was difficult, they could replace me with a more obedient one. Kian stood silently for a moment before saying, My family affairs do not require Lady Jiang's concern. With that, he took my hand and prepared to leave. Today's matter, we will deal with another day. Seeing this, my father knew Kian was angry and tried to stop him but was brushed aside. Luckily, my stepmother arrived just in time, nervously looking at me and calling my name, saying she missed me and wanted to talk. Kian paused. Seeing me nod, I went with my stepmother to her quarters. My father followed closely behind. After we left, the lady of the house flew into a rage and ordered someone to investigate who had gone to my father and stirred up the trouble.
16.
When we arrived at my aunt's courtyard, the main room was given to my father, who prepared a banquet with wine to apologize to Kai, and aunt sent all the servants away and stayed with me in the side chamber to talk. Listening to the silence from next door, aunt anxiously asked, If the medicine given to your father works and he wakes up, won't he be angry? I asked her, Aunt, if you could leave the Jiang estate, what kind of life would you want? Aunt was momentarily stunned. I haven't really thought about it, she said. Then she sighed. I've lived in the estate since I was little. Besides tending the flowers, I don't know how to do anything else, nor how to make a living. Being a gardener is a good life, I said, swirling my teacup. Once this is all over, we'll move out to live somewhere else. Aunt looked dazed. We can really move out? Yes. This trip back to my natal home was part of a plan. Aunt and I wanted to help Kian succeed, and in return, he would help Aunt leave the Jiang estate. I waited in the room for a long while until Kian finally appeared from the main house. I went out and asked, Are we leaving now? Yes. When we left, my eldest brother and the steward saw us off. My father was drunk. The madam said he suddenly fell ill and couldn't get up. Kian didn't say much, but the next day, following us back to the Jiang estate, he complained bitterly to the steward. He told anyone who would listen that the entire Jiang family was worthless. No wonder they'd marry off their daughter, who hadn't even come of age, to his old master. Though his master was extraordinary and brave, he was old. To be frank, a girl that young would be better suited as his granddaughter, not a concubine. This gossip spread and was exaggerated until even the young emperor was stirred, teasing at court whether Kai and had some joyous event recently. Kian didn't hide it. He publicly admitted he was old and couldn't handle such a blessing and had already accepted me as his goddaughter that day. That day, he had intended to finalize the adoption with the Jiang family. But once inside, he saw the lady of the house and several daughters ready to fight him, clearly disdaining his family's status. So it failed, and the misunderstanding persisted. The young emperor was shocked, first thinking the Jiang women were crude and petty, and second, curious about what Kian had gone through to be so angry. Everyone at court knew Kian was a man who kept his emotions hidden, a cunning old fox. Even if he hated someone, he wouldn't easily badmouth them. It was rare to see him quarrel over a woman's affair. Since Kian was somewhat like the young emperor's mentor, the emperor naturally wanted to defend him. He immediately decreed me his goddaughter, issuing an imperial order that no one could challenge. As for my father, the young emperor thought hard but couldn't recall who he was, so he knew he was unimportant and dismissed his official duties, punishing him to stay indoors and reflect on his mistakes. The day after my father was locked indoors, the madam came with my elder sister to the estate. 17. Like before my wedding, the two of them timidly knelt and begged for forgiveness. They brought several young maids who roamed the courtyard, telling everyone I was abusing my power and forcing the mother and eldest sister of the legitimate line to kneel outside. Aunt was also brought along. Though she was supposed to kneel with them, as soon as she did, my maids helped her up and brought her inside for tea. It was cold outside, not good weather. After a while, my elder sister couldn't stand it, crying and begging to leave. The madam slapped her hard to silence her tears. After waiting a long time, Yunjin arrived with several senior maids from Lu's household and tied up all the young maids from the Jiang family. No wonder everyone says the Jiang family is unruly. Seeing this, it's true. Who let servants run amok in someone else's house? Yunjin shouted as she walked, cursing loudly. Yun, come out and manage this. These fools have been gossiping all the way to the madam's ears. You know how fragile she is. Aren't they just making trouble on purpose? The senior maid stepped forward and said, Miss Jiang, Madam says this is your family matter to handle. If you need help, just ask. After all, you are the master's adopted daughter, and Madam is your godmother. Whatever happens, the elders will support you. By then, I had stepped outside and overheard Jiang Yao angrily say, a mere concubine, showing such attitude. The madam tried to cover her mouth but was too late. Yunjin stood firmly in front of her. With your reputation now, even if you wanted to be a concubine, no one would want you. Maybe not even were willing to have you. Jiang Yao was about to speak, but the madam bowed her head and kowtowed. I admit defeat. Jiang Yun, just tell me what you want. I want my aunt's freedom. Her servitude contract is in your hands, isn't it? I turned to Chun Yang, who was trembling. I took her hand and said softly, set my aunt free. Low sobs reached my ears and eventually turned into loud wailing. She had wanted to leave the estate long ago. At first, she dreamed of saving enough silver to marry. Later, after having children, she still wanted to leave and raise them herself. But as she endured the hardships inside the estate, she seemed to forget that hope. Until I was promised to Kayan, she had even tried to escape with me, but failed. Now, she wanted to leave openly and with dignity. 18. After settling my auntie, I went to see Kayan. There's no such thing as kindness without reason in this world. To cooperate, you have to risk something. What I risked was my life. In my hand was the vial Kayan had tossed me that day, a vial containing a poison that could kill upon drawing blood. The reason Kayan agreed to ally with me back then was because from that moment I had resolved to become a dead person. When the time came, he sat by the window drinking wine and admiring the moon. I mustered my courage, sat down, and poured a cup of wine. The strong alcohol burned my throat, but my heart suddenly felt lighter, and I was no longer afraid. I poured another cup, dissolved the poison pills from the vial into the wine, and raised it to him in a toast. Thank you, sir, for arranging things for my auntie. Today I pledge to die and will not reveal your secrets. Kayan didn't give me a single look the whole time. When he saw me swallow the poison and then finish a bowl of strong wine, he frowned slightly, displeased, and muttered, "Such wastefulness." The voice faded in my ears. Though he was close by, I felt the world spinning, and soon I completely lost consciousness. 19. I didn't die. The wine was too strong, and I drank it too fast. I just got drunk. The poison Kayan gave me wasn't deadly at all. It was Sahexiang pills, used to calm the heart and mind, something he kept on hand since he was old. He said he had softened with age and didn't want to kill anymore. He asked if I wanted to leave the mansion or marry someone. He could arrange either. Of course, I wanted to leave the Jiang mansion. My auntie was still waiting for me, but I couldn't leave. Only in Kai's mansion, with my father and madam present, Did anyone dare not harm my auntie out of fear? If I left Kai's mansion, my auntie and I would have no way to survive. In this world, having money without power is no way to live. Just like the many beautiful concubines in this mansion, though Kai didn't stop them if they wanted to leave, none of them could step beyond this invisible thorny fence. I thought my life would be like this forever. Then Han Xingyuan came looking for me. He thought living like this for a lifetime was pitiful. He said his family had arranged an official posting for him. He was going to Jiangnan and asked if I wanted to go with him. Just then, Kaian staggered out with his wine gourd and asked, "Married as wife or taken as concubine? Are you planning to have my sworn daughter become your mistress?" When he said this, I remembered that even the emperor had recognized me as his goddaughter. Han Xingyuan pounded his head on the ground repeatedly. "I dare not offend the lady. I only seek your approval. I am willing to marry her in an official ceremony carried in a grand sedan." Daring to offend and offending at the same time. Without family to accompany her, sneaking into the mansion to secretly meet with my daughter. If anyone else found out, she'd be ruined. Han Xingyuan stammered, "I'm leaving soon, and some things must be said before there's no chance. We were originally to be engaged. She was supposed to be my wife." Kaian quietly listened, then looked at me and said, "He's a fool, reckless, only knows to kowtow when in trouble, with no foresight. If it were up to me, I wouldn't agree to this marriage. But judging by you, you probably want to run away with him." Kaian took the vial from his sleeve, poured out a pill, and said to Han Xingyuan, "This medicine was meant for a few old fools. Now consider yourself lucky. If you survive after taking it, I will marry my daughter to you. If you die, it's fate. Naturally, if you're willing to settle down, I can pretend this never happened." Before he finished, Han Xingyuan snatched the pill and swallowed it. "Only ask you to keep your word. If I'm lucky enough to survive, even if you don't allow me to marry her, please let her leave Kai's mansion." Kaian looked at his empty hand and asked me, "Did he take it?" I suggested, "Try feeding him another pill." Kaian realized he hadn't seen clearly just now. To prevent Han Xingyuan from cheating, he pried open his mouth and fed him another pill, watching the pill go down his throat. Han Xingyuan did not resist. Kaian was not pleased. 20, he asked me. "If he's such a fool, why did you have to choose him?" That year, during the Lantern Festival, he stood in the front row and looked thin. Han Xingyuan's match was my plan. Back then, Madame wanted to use my marriage to gain favors between her own family and the Jiang family. My original prospects were basically to become a concubine for this family or that family. My older sisters had better situations. My third sister's family was wealthy merchants. My fourth sister came from nobility. The eldest sister was favored by my father, and my second sister was the Madame's legitimate daughter. Only my auntie and I were born slaves, with no backing, no one to protect us, the easiest to manipulate. That day, Madame kept telling my auntie these things, just 2 words: accept fate. They were born nobles. We were born slaves. That was our fate. Before, I did not accept my fate, so I spent 2 taels of silver to hire a thug to watch the young masters by the river during the Lantern Festival, picking one from a less well-off family to push into the water. Han Xingyuan's match came from that. When he fell into the water, I jumped in to save him. The incident escalated, and Madame had no choice but to negotiate a marriage with the Han family. But in the end, my father wanted to send a daughter into Kai's mansion, and Madame chose me. That day, Madame told my auntie, "Accept fate. This is your destiny. You struggled, thinking you could become the main wife, but this is the end. Blame your poor birth." My auntie accepted it, crying until her eyes nearly closed. I did not accept it, so I found Han Xingyuan, dug up Kaian's records at the Imperial Academy, and found out he liked men. Later, Han Xingyuan couldn't bear it and stopped Kai and Sedan, begging him to treat me well. I risked my life and revealed that secret, just to free my auntie from slavery. 21. Han Xingyuan showing up was something I did not expect. I thought I had made things clear to him. I had even told him when I was about to marry off that I was the one who pushed him into the water. But he still came. The three of us stared at each other in silence for a long while. Kayan looked at Han Xingyuan, who was quietly resigned to death, and finally lost patience, asking, "What is all this really about?" Han Xingyuan, originally quietly awaiting death, paused at the question and quietly replied, "Maybe because I'm young and healthy, please wait a little longer." Kayan got even angrier, flinging his sleeves as he walked away, cursing, "What kind of nonsense is this?" Han Xingyuan shouted after Kayan for a long while but received no response. He then knelt on the ground for a long time, still alive. He asked me when the poison would take effect. I stared at his face for a while and couldn't help but laugh. "Han Xingyuan, where are you being assigned? Can you take my aunt with you?" "Yes." Han Xingyuan answered without hesitation. "I will take care of her. Then come and formally propose marriage." I had lived many years in the capital. It wouldn't be bad to get out and see the world. 22. On the day I left the capital, Jiang Yao's engagement was broken. The other party hired a notorious matchmaking woman who disgraced her completely. Crowds of curious onlookers gathered in front of her family's mansion. Snobbery is human nature. Kayan openly despised the Jiang family. Even when I was married off, it was out of the Kai residence's gate. Just as my aunt and I suffered endless bullying inside the mansion with no one to intervene, now that the Jiang family was collapsing, no one cared about their fate. The madam hung herself in her room the night before Jiang Yao's engagement was broken. Earlier, she came to see me. She thought the Jiang family's downfall was all because I whispered in Kai An's ear. She thought I resented her for treating me poorly all those years and was seeking revenge. She thought if she died, the sudden storm would calm. She begged me to show mercy, at least not to let Jiang Yao be mistreated by her in-laws. But a collapsing building cannot be held up by one person alone. The Jiang family's downfall had been sown many years ago. When the vessel is full, it will overturn. When the person is full, they will fall. My father always thought he could climb higher, always wanted to climb higher, and was ruthless in pursuit of this goal. Years later, I learned my aunt had tried to poison my father but was seen through. He was lucid when Kayan helped him inside. In the end, Kayan did nothing and left. But at that moment, I understood the Jiang family's fate was already doomed to fall inevitably. The Jiang family's survival today was only because Kayan secretly supported and promoted them, but my father wanted more. Greed taints pure feelings with worldly filth, shatters beautiful illusions into grotesque forms. The more you invest, the more unbearable it is to recall in clarity. I never liked the madam. She was narrow-minded and paranoid. My aunts and my hardships were inseparable from her. But she couldn't escape the constraints of this world. She disliked her husband's concubines, but all men were like that. She couldn't lose her reputation as a jealous woman, so she vented all her hatred on her husband's concubines. She could do nothing to the favored concubines, so she picked on my aunt to suppress and bully. She was not pitiful. At least she could vent her anger on others. But all the women in this world are pitiable, like my aunt, who was falsely defamed. She could only blame her bad fate and wished she could just die. Perhaps the madam still doesn't understand that, in most men's eyes, what women think are huge issues are trivial. Kayan wouldn't deal harshly with the Jiang family because of my few words but would distance himself because of personal likes and dislikes, and that was enough to bring disaster to the Jiang family. After all, my father was weak and burdened, lacking the wisdom to maintain his position. Without Kayan, their fall was only a matter of time. When I left, the concubines of the Kai mansion all came to see me off, and Lady Lu gave me many gifts. Yunjin slipped me a key and told me, "If he treats you badly and you don't want to stay with him, use this key to get a contract I prepared earlier and start over somewhere else." "What will you do if I use this contract?" Yunjin waved her hand casually. "Do you think I'm as foolish as you? The Kai mansion is so nice, with so many sisters to keep me company. I never want to leave. I'll just outlive the old man and live with the lady here. No need to go suffer outside." She was only a little older than me but had always looked after me since I entered the mansion. "The sisters treated me well, so I treat you the same. Ayun, fate has brought us together. We're family now. If you have any difficulties, come back to us. Take care. I didn't know what my future would be like, but I decided to try and live as well as I could. I waved at them and helped my aunt into the carriage. Extra chapter 1. Cayenne. I realized very early that I had no interest in women. Instead, I was more attracted to men. Perhaps it was because, in my childhood, I once saw my father secretly meeting his lover in the study. The jade mountain toppled on the desk, the ceremonial jade tablet dyed with hair dye, faint ink marks, and the room filled with an intimate atmosphere. I thought mutual affection was nothing more than this. But my mother, confined to the inner quarters, wasted her life there and hated the Longyang love, male same-sex love, the most. Later, when I entered the National Academy, I was also somewhat wild, lingering with classmates at Qingfeng Pavilion, finding some young boys to accompany me. I was even reprimanded by the Academy's head, and my name entered the disciplinary register. But among the literati of our dynasty, such behavior was considered spirited and lofty. I told my mother I was just keeping company with them. She didn't say much, just warned me repeatedly, and then stopped. I never expected that many years later, two little rascals would dig this up and make a big fuss over it. I am getting old now, and I find this quite amusing. I want to see how those two little ones plan to fight against fate. But I noticed that young Yun, so young yet so weary and gloomy, came to me shyly and said she wanted me to do her a favor. To sleep with her father? My drunken haze nearly vanished from shock. What kind of wild words are these from someone so young? Yet she was desperate. The lowly seek to change their fate, and all they rely on is their own life. I want to see how far she can go, and I do want to fulfill an old wish. But when Jiang Wenyuan lay naked before me, I felt dazed, unable to describe the strange feeling, so I just sat and watched him. He was no longer the proud young man of years past. Now his face was haggard, his skin rough and coarse, utterly uninspiring. Especially since he was clearly awake but pretending to sleep, truly off-putting. Such a vulgar man, far inferior to those delicate daughters. I stepped outside the room and suddenly felt all my confusion over the years swept away. That little Yun came to me obedient and humble. I found her a bit more agreeable at once. Later, when the Han family's son wanted to take her away, I gave her some dowry, perhaps to complete this fate. 2. Zhang Yao. I'm not as pretty as Zhang Yun. My mother is not as pretty as Zhang Yun's servant-born birth mother. But my mother told me, no matter how good-looking they were born, their status was low. Her mother served my mother. Zhang Yun's mother must serve me. I am different from her. I was born more noble. Good families look for daughters-in-law based on birth, family background, and virtue. How many care about looks alone? Yet people always praise Zhang Yun for being smart, for being beautiful. I was very jealous. With such a lowly birth, a woman who uses her looks to serve others, born to be a concubine, she should rot in the mud, married to a pig farmer, stupid and ugly, like a low-class person. But how could she have such a face? How did my mother give birth to me with such a face? Later, Lord Han from the National Academy came to propose on behalf of the illegitimate son Han Xingyuan, saying he liked Zhang Yun. I had seen Han Xingyuan once from afar, also handsome. When he came to see Zhang Yun, he was carefully dressed and brought gifts, saying he had achievements and would give Zhang Yun a good life. My mother said Han Xingyuan was just an illegitimate son. Though accomplished, he didn't seem very clever and wouldn't go far. But my mother was wrong. Success comes from humble beginnings. Han Xingyuan was scheming and good at hiding his talents. Later he became a disciple of Cayenne and formed a close bond with the young emperor. He rose steadily to a high official, eventually entering the cabinet as a prime minister. Many years later, at a banquet hosting Han Xingyuan and Zhang Yun, I watched from the backyard tower as Han Xingyuan carefully helped Zhang Yun down from the carriage. They smiled at each other, truly a loving couple, treating each other with respect. I was mad with jealousy and secretly met Han Xingyuan, telling him, "Do you know? Your wife, Zhang Yun, schemed to marry you. When you fell into the water and almost drowned, it was she who had someone push you. You think you ruined her purity and want to marry her, but she is a scheming and shameless woman who doesn't care about being the legitimate wife. Han Xingyuan didn't recognize me. He stared for a long time, then uncertainly asked, "Are you Jiang Yao?" A few years earlier, I was slapped by the main wife, fell and hit the corner of a table, leaving a scar on my face. When he saw me, I hurriedly covered my face with my sleeve. Seeing this, Han Xingyuan recognized me. "Since you brought this up, I might as well tell you an old story." He paused, looked at the blooming flowers in the courtyard and smiled. At that lantern festival, she spent 2 taels of silver hiring a thug to push someone into the water. I also hired the same thug, paid the same amount, and told him to push me. You don't know how lucky I feel to have married a Yun. I was furious and lost my composure. Her mother was a servant girl, born lowly, once a concubine. Aren't you afraid of the gossip about marrying such a wife with your current status and position? If anyone speaks ill of my wife, it's not about her but about me, Han Xingyuan said, brushing me aside as he was about to leave. A Yun is tired of entertaining at banquets. I have to take her home.
Goodbye.
With such a background and such a vile character, what do you see in her? Of course, I see the person she is. Han Xingyuan looked at me baffled. Since I asked for her hand, everything about her is perfect to me, birth or character. Out of respect for you sisters, I won't argue today. But next time, I won't spare you. He was serious, and I dared not stop him. But I knew he truly loved a Yun, loved her enough to overlook her status, her scheming, and her past. My mother was wrong. When a man loves a woman, he won't care about her birth. If he did, he wouldn't love her that much. After Han Xingyuan and a Yun left, I fell seriously ill. In a haze, I dreamed of my childhood. A visiting lady praised a Yun as breathtaking, calling it a pity. But when she saw me, she only smiled politely and said casually, "Also, very good." I was already sensible then, and found that praise unbearably harsh. I didn't like such praise. I wished she could look at me with the same eyes she looked at a Yun and sincerely praise me once. I wished I were prettier. Then in the dream, I lived again and was born with a face everyone praised. I was very happy. The end.